to our podcast. I'm the Disturbed Southern Belle.
And I'm the Gentleman.
We're continuing our series on some of the more interesting and sort of dark and disturbing tales from music history. And in this next segment, we're going to be talking about the famous blues musician by the name of Robert Johnson. So Johnson was one of the first inductees into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He lived a very short life, though. He only lived from 1911 to 1938. And he was this legendary blues musician whose influence has spanned multiple generations and genres. He was known as a brilliant guitarist and masterful storyteller. His songs and the intrigue surrounding his short life and death have made for a unique legacy in musical history. Below, we're going to answer basically a few questions here about his life and sort of give you an understanding of what kind of made him important in music history. So, Robert Leroy Johnson was born in Hazelhurst, Mississippi on or around May 8th, 1911. His life was already atypical when he was born. His mother, Julia Dodds, had birthed 10 children ahead of him, all with his sharecropper, husband, Charles. But Robert was born out of wedlock, and he was fathered by a plantation worker named Noah Johnson. So he wasn't one of the... He was
an outsider.
Sort of, yeah. Ahead of Johnson's birth, Charles Dodds was forced to relocate to Memphis and change his name after being chased out of town by some prominent white landowners. And when Johnson was just 3 or 4, he joined Dodds, who was now going by the name of Spencer, in Tennessee. In the city, the young boy's world opened up. He attended school, discovered popular music, while his older brother taught him how to play the guitar. So after several years, he returns to the Mississippi Delta, where he joined his mother and her new husband, Dusty Willis. But Johnson had already gotten bitten, so to speak, by the music bug, and he was much more interested in his craft than working in the fields. At 19, he married a woman named Virginia Travis, though sadly she passed just a year later during childbirth. And not long after that, in 1931, he married his second wife, Coletta Craft. Sadly, she too would pass away within a few years. After his foundational years in Memphis, he continued to practice the guitar while classmates remembered him playing the jaw harp and the harmonica in school. One of the earliest accounts of him as a musician comes from the Delta blues pioneer Son House, who first encountered the young artist around 1930 in Robinsonville, Mississippi. House recalled that Johnson blew a harmonica, and he was pretty good with that, but he wanted to play guitar. Johnson's guitar skills, according to House, were less than stellar. In fact, the elder musician referred to his attempts at such a racket you've never heard. Get that guitar away from that boy, people would say. He's running everybody crazy with it, which is kind of crazy when you think.
It is.
So just 2 years later, when Johnson returned from his travels across the Delta, he played once again for son and fellow musician Willie Brown. This time, however, they were staggered by his improvement. He was so good, marveled House. When he finished, all of our mouths were standing open. Johnson soon ventured beyond the Delta region, performing across the South, as well as in such blues hotspots as Chicago, New York, Detroit, and St. Louis. As legend has it, the artist often concentrated his performance of just one woman in the audience, a risky business in a world where men were happy to fight when they were aggravated or feeling like they might have been getting somebody picking up on the lady, you might say. Right. I'm trying to word it where it doesn't sound too risque. The artist often toured with fellow bluesman Johnny Shines, who later recalled that Johnson was always neat and tidy, despite days spent traveling dusty Delta highways. Shines also shared that Johnson was just as likely to perform other people's songs as well as his own, growing repertoire, basically. On any given night, his set might have included material from Bing Crosby, Blind Willie, McTell, Lonnie Johnson, or Jimmy Rogers. So that's like a weird genre there. It's like, just all kinds of music, which is fine, but it's just, odd. Like many of his peers, Johnson performed songs that his audience requested, songs that earned him money. I don't blame him for that. Around 1936, Johnson paid a visit to H.C. Spear, a record shop owner and talent scout in Jackson, Mississippi. Like many of his contemporaries, Johnson wished to put his music on tape. Spear connected the artist with Arc Records and producer Don Law, who would go on to oversee Columbia Records' country music division and work with the likes of Johnny Cash, Jimmy Dean, and Ray Price. So on November 23rd, 1936, Johnson traveled to San Antonio, Texas to record the first of his 29 sides with Law. The artist was allegedly paid around $100 for several days of work. The following June, he returned to Texas, this time working with Law at a studio in Dallas. These sessions, taking place over a total of 5 days, produced Robert Johnson's entire catalog of recordings, nearly all of which have become standards in the blues canon. While 12 double-sided singles were released between 1937 and 1939, a larger collection of alternate takes would be unearthed long after his death. His first 78 record, Terraplane Blues, coupled with Kind-Hearted Woman Blues, was a moderate regional hit and proved to be the most commercially successful release of his lifetime. Other highlights include Love in Vain, later adapted by the Rolling Stones, and the often covered 30-20 Blues and I'll Believe I'll Dust My Broom, which Elmore James famously recorded in 1951. James's version was inducted into the Blues Hall of Fame, the Grammy Hall of Fame, and the Library of Congress's National Recording Registry. Sweet Home Chicago became another favorite of Johnson's, while his powerful performances of Come On in My Kitchen and Hellhound on My Trail have been admired by musicians and historians alike. Crossroads Blues would also be covered by Elmore James and later by Eric Clapton and Cream. Clapton's first vocal recording, meanwhile, was a cover of Johnson's Rambling on My Mind and appeared on John Mayall and the Blues Breakers' 1966 LP Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton. As with the tradition in blues music, many of Johnson's compositions borrowed elements from other artists' songs. His singular talents, however, are what made these recordings so remarkable. His vocal delivery was complex and highly emotive, thanks in part to his subtle yet effective pitch inflections, known as microtonality. He was also admired by future generations of singer-songwriters for his deft lyricism. In Bob Dylan's Chronicles, Volume 1, the folk legend wrote that Johnson's tunes weren't customary blues songs. They were so utterly fluid. At first, they went by quickly, too quickly to even get. They jumped all over the place in range and subject matter. Short, punchy verses that resulted in some panoramic story fires of mankind blasting off the surface of this spitting piece of plastic. The final element that made Johnson's recording so unique was his unique guitar technique. The artist was often associated with Gibson guitars, and he used this instrument like a second voice. His eclectic style offered a full sound, one which promoted Rolling Stones guitarist Keith Richards declared Robert Johnson was like an orchestra all by himself. While the source of his dexterity was shrouded in mystery and was a significant part of his legend, he has long been considered to be one of the history's greatest guitarists. After his final recording session in 1937, he performed around Texas accompanied by Johnny Shines. They played informal juke joints and parties and dances just as they had always done before heading back to Mississippi. Details of the rest of the year are slim, although it's known that Robert spent some time in Memphis and Helena, Arkansas. What is known is that he died near Greenwood, Mississippi on August 16, 1938. He was 27 years old. His death remained unreported for 30 years, and without a formal autopsy, the public had been left to speculate on the cause of his death, adding to the lore that surrounds him. Through a variety of accounts, including those by fellow blues artists David Honeyboy Edwards and Sonny Boy Williamson, we know that he spent the last weeks of his life playing regularly at a juke joint attached to the Three Forks store just outside of Greenwood. In one version of the story, Johnson flirted with a woman at a party, possibly the wife of the store's owner, and was poisoned by the jealous husband. He became so sick that he had to be taken into Greenwood, where he perished. In 1968, Mississippi journalist Geraldine Waldrow sought to find out the truth about his final days. In addition to unearthing his death certificate, he discovered the artist may have been born with congenital syphilis. According to a doctor, it's possible that he had an aneurysm caused by this and his love of drinking moonshine, so kind of coupled together.
Right.
In a more recent account published in 2006 in the British Medical Journal, Dr. David Cornell argues that based on Johnson's appearance in photos, the artist may have suffered from Marfan syndrome. This genetic disorder, which affects the body's connective tissue, could have contributed to his early death. His final resting spot is just as confusing as his death. Today, 3 headstones around Greenwood pay tribute to him. In 1990, Columbia Records erected a monument at the Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church, where the artist was believed to have been buried in an unmarked grave. That same year, an Atlanta band, aptly named the Tombstones, had a smaller marker placed at the Payne Chapel in Quito, Mississippi, where it was also alleged that he was laid to rest. In 2000, an 85-year-old woman named Rosie Exridge claimed that her husband had helped bury Johnson under a pecan tree at a church north of Greenwood, where a third headstone now sits. So they don't even know where he's buried. Of all the myths that surround his life, the most famous one is the claim that he sold his soul to the devil in order to become a famous blues musician. And this is why it's supposed to be, all of a sudden he could just play the guitar. He was supposed to have been so terrible. And then all of a sudden he was just, miraculous and amazing. So many residents of the Mississippi Delta will roll their eyes when blues enthusiasts ask about the Crossroads where he supposedly met the devil. So basically he was supposed to walk, there was supposed to be this legend you could walk to a crossroad like after midnight or something and you can meet the devil, blah, blah, blah. You can sell him your soul, get, whatever. So those in the know do not bother asking. They simply visit the junction of Highway 61 and Highway 49 and they take a photo. So that's where it's supposed to be at. But that modern day spot where the two highways meet is at least a half a mile from one that would have existed in his lifetime. So in fact, there are no actual crossroads. In Crossroad Blues, he sings an age-old tale about a man's choice between good and evil. And it goes, I went down to the crossroad, fell down on my knees, asked the Lord above, have mercy now. Say poor Bob, if you please. There is a long-standing Delta legend of a bluesman who waited by the side of the deserted crossroad one night for Satan to come and tune his guitar. It's a story made more relevant when coupled with Johnson's frequent reference to the devil, including in the song Me and the Devil Blues, in which he sings, Me and the devil was walking side by side. Other songs such as Preaching Blues, Up Jumped the Devil, and Hellhound on My Trail help just make the legend more credible to people's minds, basically. He's certainly not the only blues artist who sang about the devil, though. Of course, Skip James, Tampa Red, Lonnie Johnson, Joe Williams, and Petey Wheatstraw, to name a few, all sang of Satan. The latter artist even nicknamed himself the Devil's Son-in-Law after one of his 1931 recordings. While his incredible improvements of the guitar as detailed by Son House were certainly miraculous, 2008 story and Living Blues magazine offers a more viable explanation. In those 2 years when he first traveled the Delta, he met a guitarist, Ike Zimmerman, who took the young artist under his wing, so to speak, and according to blues scholar Bruce Comfort, he spent the better part of a year living with Zimmerman and basically studying and practicing. So, is that what happened?
Sense.
I have no clue.
It's definitely a more logical explanation.
You would think, yes. In 1961, Columbia released King of the Delta Blues Singers, a compilation of his music. The album made its way into the hands of American folk artists, including Bob Dylan, and soon became an immensely popular title among artists in Britain's emerging rock scene, inspiring the likes of Fleetwood Mac, the Rolling Stones, and Led Zeppelin. Countless artists, including almost everyone mentioned in this story, have covered his songs, while many of rock's greatest guitarists, including Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix, have cited him as an influence. He has also helped usher in the electrified mid-century style of Chicago blues played by the likes of Muddy Waters, Willie Dixon, and Chuck Berry. His legacy and his immense contributions to popular music have been recognized by a broad range of institutions, including the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the U.S. Postal Service, the Library of Congress, and the Recording Academy, which bestowed a posthumous Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award upon him in 2006. So, what do you think? Think you sold his soul? Think you practice?
Personally, I'm more in line with the more logical explanation.
I figure that's what happened too. I figure it's something along those lines. I mean, it's a couple of years. I mean, you could get better in a few years.
Oh, absolutely.
If you really put in the effort. I mean, unless you just literally had no talent. I mean, I'm guessing there's some people probably just don't have the talent for certain things, just cannot seem to grasp and get it. But an average person, if you practiced enough, you could get pretty decent, I'm sure. But anyway, we hope you liked that segment. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. And don't forget to stay disturbed.